War is if you never have to fire a round and nobody ever knew you launched the fight.
Is it possible there have already been attacks using weather weapons?
Some people believe that Katrina was weather warfare at its most potent.
One of the significant elements of weather warfare is the plausible deniability angle to it. You can't really attribute it to anyone at all because you don't know if it's just the weather or if it's some more sinister military application that you're being subjected to.
You can raise covert wars, which our country and many others are famous for, and yet have the deniability that goes along with it.
Ce sont en fait des nuages, on les voit très bien, toute cette ligne. Alors ce sont les navires, figurez-vous, avec la condensation. C'est un petit peu ce qui se passe fréquemment par les avions.
Et vous voyez, les chemtrails couvrent 50%, voire 75% du ciel. Pas besoin d'être un expert pour comprendre quand on voit ça sur l'image satellite qu'il y a forcément un effet sur la température de surface.
Ich glaube, dass es möglich sein wird, in den nächsten 50 oder 100 Jahren das Wetter und das Klima künstlich zu steuern.
The government spraying toxic chemicals into the skies all over the world to stop global warming.
Well, they say the government is dumping chemicals on us to control or manipulate the weather.
These are literally crimes against humanity.
We made measurements from the jet fuel as well and noticed that the jet fuel contained aluminum and barium.
He claimed that they may have to spray chemicals into the air in the future. They won't admit that they're doing it to combat global warming.
Northwest, thinking I would find clean air, and seeing these trails above that were blocking, in some cases 60, 70, 80% of my solar uptake, clearly something was going on. And research led me to this subject. I began testing water, did not want to find these toxic heavy metals, but I did, in ever increasing amounts. I'm in this fight because my children have no future if we don't stop this. And even if we stop this, we faced immense challenges, immense. There is even more climate engineering going on above the clouds on days like today, and we know this because it's coming down in the rain. These particulates are so small they enter right through the lung lining, go straight into the bloodstream, and adhere to your cell receptors like a plaque. Again, we are all getting dumber by the day, and that's why, again, I focus on this issue. If we can't think clearly, what challenges will we face? None. We will face none. And as far as what the global elite do to exempt themselves, there are chelation methods available to them that we don't have. It's up to us to act. It's up to us to do what we can. Earth is now a toxic planet. There's no question about this. You can't hide from this. In fact, the only uncontaminated body of water on the planet is Lake Vostok in Antarctica because it's below a mile of ice. That's it. Nothing is uncontaminated, but the greatest single source is, again, climate engineering. All roads lead back to climate engineering. Why are the bees dying off? Colony collapse disorder. And I've spoken to the head bee people in the country, but they won't look. So why are the bees dying 1,000 miles into the wilderness? They're looking at a chemical, and chemicals are bad. But why are the bees dying 1,000 miles into the wilderness? We have a study from 2010. 1,000 whales from the most remote places on the planet that had quote, jaw-dropping levels of aluminum in their tissue. There is nowhere to hide from this. How many have already died? How many people have already died as a direct result of these programs? Respiratory mortality in the continental US from 2005 to 2010 went from 8th on the list of mortality to 3rd. That's an astronomical amount of people. How many people have asthma? Alzheimer's. By the way, the Alzheimer's Association about a month ago refused to sell me a $500 sponsorship for their event because they told me in no uncertain terms they did not want me talking about aluminum being connected to Alzheimer's. So we did a little research and found out that elements of the aluminum industry sponsor the Alzheimer's Association. We have, with the geoengineering, weather warfare. We know that cyclonic suppression is not only possible, but being done. This is hurricane suppression and hurricane augmentation. We saw Cyclone Haiyan last year in the Philippines cut a swath through that island nation, and now the U.S. military is there under humanitarian pretext, but now they're setting up bases. Same thing happened in Pakistan. Same thing in Thailand. Thailand refused the U.S. a military base that they told Thailand was for weather monitoring. The Thai government apparently knew it was for weather manipulation. They refused the base. Thailand immediately found itself underneath record floods. So we know this is going on, and when you have climate engineering, you cannot separate that from biological warfare. You cannot. So we have a climate science community that is either clinically blind, in total denial, or lying for a paycheck. How can you have the largest scientific panel in human history, the IPCC, 2,000 climatologists, that cannot recognize this atrocity in our skies? How is that possible? It doesn't take a lot of consideration to answer this question. It's about power and control. It's always been about power and control. And we have leaders of nations on the floor of the UN stating that their country is being droughted out by NATO weather modification programs. This is fact, absolute fact. Our media does not cover any of this. The power structure, the military-industrial complex will never, ever admit defeat. Never. I talked to an insider with these programs. I can't release his name, but I published the conversation. And here's what he said. The government will never disclose these programs because they know if the public found out, and I'm quoting about verbatim, they would find those responsible and shoot them or hang them in front of a firing squad. They know how the public will react to this. One of the most incredible men that I feel ever lived, Martin Luther King, said there comes a time when silence is betrayal. And we are at that time.